Imagine this for a second. You're out on the water, maybe on a small fishing boat, and you look out at the horizon. But instead of just seeing, sea and sky, you see steel.
A wall of it.
Yeah, a massive wall of gray steel just cutting through the waves. And it's not a cruise ship. This is, well, the source material we have today calls it a massive armada.
Which is a pretty loaded term. We're talking about the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group.
And it's not just out for a Sunday sail. It is heading with speed and power straight for one of the most volatile regions on the entire planet.
It's such a striking image to start with, isn't it? And it's not really about the tonnage of the ships or even the number of missiles. It's about the message that formation is sending.
Exactly.
We're looking at this collision, really, between raw military power and some very, very high-stakes diplomacy. It's happening in real time, it's loud, and it's serious.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are unpacking a really intense situation that's developing between the United States and Iran. We've got a whole stack of reports here.
We do. Articles, official statements, some leaked intelligence.
And it all centers on this new ultimatum that was issued this Wednesday by President Donald Trump. And the message is, well, it's not subtle. It's about nuclear weapons, a ticking clock, and that very large naval fleet.
And our mission here, really, is to look past the scary headlines. I mean, if you just scroll through your social media feed, it feels like World War III is about to break out every other Tuesday.
Right.
We need to understand why this moment is so fragile. We have to look at the timeline, what happened last year that set the stage for this, and all these confusing signals coming out of the diplomatic channels.
Because on one side, you have these threats of, quote, total war.
And on the other, you have these whispers about secret back-channel meetings. It's confusing.
It feels like we're watching a poker game where everyone has just shoved all their chips into the middle. So let's start with the catalyst. This Wednesday, President Trump posts on social media, and he really, really doesn't hold back.
He does not. And the language is so specific. He wrote, and I'm quoting here, "Hopefully Iran will quickly come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal, no nuclear weapons."
And that no nuclear weapons bit, that was in all caps, right?
All caps. You got it. It's basically shouting through text. It signals the absolute uncrossable red line.
But there was more to it.
Yeah.
The part that really ratchets up the tension.
That's the key part. He adds, time is running out. It really is essential. And that phrase, time is running out, that's what turns this from just another diplomatic statement into an actual ultimatum.
And an ultimatum always comes with an or else. If time's running out, what happens when the clock hits zero?
Well, the or else is explicit. It's the threat of force. Trump warned that if Tehran doesn't comply, the next strike will be much worse than any previous ones.
And he connects that threat directly to the ships we were just talking about.
Directly. He says that a massive armada is moving toward Iran with great speed and power, and that it will get its mission done swiftly and violently if necessary.
Swiftly and violently. I mean, that is some heavy, heavy rhetoric. That's not, we'll consider our options. That's a promise.
It's a promise of kinetic action, yes. And this isn't just talk. We have confirmation on the hardware. U.S. Central Command has confirmed that the USS Abraham Lincoln Strike Group is already there. It's in Middle Eastern waters.
And for anyone listening who might not follow this stuff closely, a carrier strike group isn't just one ship, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. It's the carrier itself, which is like a floating city, but it's also destroyers, cruisers, submarines. It's a force projection tool that can level a small country.
And the Pentagon isn't just, letting it sit there at anchor.
Not a chance. They are actively preparing for multi-day readiness exercises right there in the region.
So you got the words time is running out, and then you have the physical action carrier group running combat drills just off the coast. The message is pretty clear. The gun isn't just on the table, it's being loaded.
That's a perfect way to put it. But this is where we have to dig a little deeper to understand why this moment feels so combustible. Because the president said the next strike would be worse.
Right.
Which implies there was a first strike. And if you haven't been following every single beat of this news cycle, you might have missed it.
That's a really specific callback. So what is he referring to?
We have to rewind the clock a bit.
Yeah.
Go back to last year, specifically June of 2025.
Okay, June 2025. What happened?
That was something called Operation Midnight Hammer.
Even the name sounds like something out of a thriller movie.
And it was a major, major escalation. The United States, working in coordination with Israeli operations, launched direct attacks on 3 separate Iranian nuclear facilities.
So not a cyber attack, not sanctions.
No, this was direct military action, bombs on targets.
So when Trump says the next strike will be much worse, He's specifically referencing Operation Midnight Hammer.
Precisely. Tehran has already seen its facilities get hit. They've seen the smoke. So when they hear much worse, they aren't imagining some abstract scenario. They're remembering what happened last June.
And that external pressure is happening while things are also very difficult for the regime internally.
That's the other side of this coin. This ultimatum comes just weeks after another round of deadly protests rocked the country.
And the source material connects this recent unrest to something that happened a long time ago, December 2015.
Yes, and this is critical for context.
Why is a date from over a decade ago still so relevant in today's intelligence reports?
Because of the scale of the trauma from that event. The reports we have cite NPR statistics saying that at least 6,126 people were killed in the government cracked down on those protests.
Well, can you just say that number again?
6,126.
Wow. That's a massive scar on a country.
It is. It's not something a population just gets over. So you fast forward to today, and the Iranian leadership is dealing with the fallout from that. A population that remembers that bloodshed, an economy that's in trouble, and now they look out the window and see a U.S. armada.
That puts them in an almost impossible position. You've got your own people angry, you've got this history of brutal crackdowns, and now a superpower is parking an aircraft carrier on your doorstep and saying, negotiate, or else. It just sounds like a recipe for desperation.
It creates a kind of existential crisis for the regime. And normally, when the pressure gets this high, you'd expect to see diplomats scrambling or the red phones ringing off the hook.
But officially, we're hearing the opposite. It's like they've just cut the phone lines.
It's the classic diplomatic dance of denial.
Yeah, this part was a little confusing. So let's break it down. You have the official story and then what might be the real story.
Okay, so on the record, you have the Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi. And on Wednesday, he just flat out denied having any contact with the U.S. Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, about negotiations. Publicly said, we are not talking.
But then you have a major media outlet, Israel Hayom,
Right.
reporting something completely different.
And that's the disconnect.
Yeah.
While the official public line is total denial, the reporting suggests unofficial communications are happening.
So not face-to-face.
No, that would be politically impossible for the Iranians to admit to their own hardliners. But they are apparently talking through third-party mediators.
And the report names them: Oman, Qatar, and Turkey.
The usual go-betweens. It's classic back-channel diplomacy.
It's almost like in high school, when you send a note through a friend because you can't be seen talking in the hallway.
It's a very similar principle, but, with nuclear stakes. The public denial lets them save face at home, they don't look weak, while the private chatter is trying to prevent a war.
But the danger, I guess, is that the public rhetoric can take on a life of its own.
It can box you in. If you scream, no negotiations, loud enough and long enough, eventually you can't go back on it.
Well, speaking of that public rhetoric, let's look at how Tehran is actually responding to this armada threat. Because they certainly aren't waving a white flag in their speeches.
Far from it. The language is incredibly fierce. A senior Iranian official warned that any attack would be treated as a total war against us.
Total war. That's a very specific phrase. It doesn't sound like a limited skirmish.
No. Total war implies full national mobilization, using every single asset at their disposal. And they are making a point to emphasize how ready they are. We have this really chilling quote from Mohammad Pekpour. He's the commander of the Revolutionary Guard's ground forces.
What did he say?
He said the armed forces are more prepared than ever with their finger on the trigger.
Finger on the trigger, that is.
Yeah.
That's visceral. So on one side you have, time is running out, we will strike swiftly and violently.
And on the other you have, we're ready for total war and our finger is on the trigger.
That is the absolute definition of a flashpoint. Yeah. The margin for error just seems to disappear.
It does. Think about it. A stray drone, a misinterpretation on a radar screen, a militia group that goes rogue. When everyone's finger's on the trigger, the shooting can start before anyone has a chance to think.
And this is where the neighbors get worried.
Yeah.
Because this isn't just happening in a vacuum. You mentioned Turkey is one of the mediators.
Yes, and their perspective is really, really illuminating here. Turkey's in a unique position. They're a NATO ally, but they're also a major Middle Eastern power with a border in the region.
So they have a stake in this from all sides.
They do. And the Turkish foreign minister, Hakan Fidan, gave this really significant interview to Al Jazeera on Wednesday, and he's essentially waving a giant caution flag at Washington.
And what's his core message? Just don't start a war.
It's a bit more nuanced than that. I mean, his main warning is simple. It is a mistake to start a war again. But the really fascinating part, and what I think is the most insightful bit of our source material, is his critique of how the U.S. is trying to negotiate.
Okay, so what's wrong with the U.S. approach, in his view?
Faidon's advice was for the U.S. to address these disputes one by one. His argument is that when you lump all your demands together, the nuclear program, regional influence, missiles, and demand a total capitulation.
It's too much at once.
It's too much, and it's counterproductive. He warned, and this is the key word, that the current approach may even appear humiliating to Tehran.
Humiliating. That's a word you don't hear a lot in diplomacy, but it feels so important. It's about psychology, not just politics.
It is the most dangerous variable in this whole equation. Faidon is pointing out that if a nation feels humiliated, if they feel a deal is being crammed down their throat at gunpoint, they might choose to fight, even a devastating war, just to preserve their national dignity.
So Turkey is basically saying, hey, break this problem into smaller pieces. Don't make them swallow this whole thing at once, or they'll fight back just to prove they can't be pushed around.
Exactly. He's suggesting that the whole swift and violent threat might actually be backfiring. It could be making a deal harder to reach because for the Iranian leadership, being seen to cave to a U.S. ultimatum is political suicide. They simply cannot afford to look weak.
So it's this incredible paradox. The U.S. is betting that the show of force, that carrier group, will force a deal.
And Iran, feeling cornered with all its internal pressures, is promising total war if that fleet engages.
And you have the mediators in the middle trying to keep everyone talking while the rhetoric just gets hotter and hotter.
It's an incredibly fragile situation.
So let's just recap for everyone listening. Put all the pieces on the board. We have a massive U.S. naval fleet, the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group in the Middle East, running combat readiness exercises.
Right, a rehearsal for war.
We have an ultimatum from President Trump. No nuclear weapons, a warning that time is running out, and a promise that the next strike will be much worse than Operation Midnight Hammer.
And that reference is a very deliberate reminder to Iran of their vulnerability.
And then from Iran, we have official denials of any talks, but whispers of back-channeling through Oman and Qatar. And at the same time, their military commanders are saying their finger is on the trigger.
And a warning from a regional power, Turkey, that this whole strategy of humiliation might be the thing that pushes everyone over the edge.
That's the landscape.
It is.
It's a lot. And I want to step back for a second. If for you listening, maybe you're driving to work in Chicago or sitting in an apartment in London, why should this matter to you? Why care about the USS Abraham Lincoln?
Because the Middle East is still, for better or worse, the central nervous system of the global energy economy. If this does escalate into the total war Iran is threatening, we are not talking about some distant conflict. We're talking about the immediate disruption of global shipping lanes.
Which means gas prices, oil prices.
It means oil prices spike overnight. It means supply chains freeze. It means inflation. The economic shockwave hits everyone, everywhere. And that's before we even get to the humanitarian cost or the nuclear risk. If Iran decides the only way to guarantee its survival against an armada is to actually build the bomb,
then the whole world becomes a much more dangerous place.
Overnight, yes. This is one of those situations where geopolitics stops being abstract. It's ships in the water and threats on the table.
And it leaves us with a really, really difficult final thought to consider.
It does. We have to ask ourselves, if the entire U.S. strategy depends on swift and violent threats to force a negotiation, but a key regional player like Turkey is warning that this very strategy of humiliation makes negotiation impossible.
Is the Armada actually preventing a war, or is it making one inevitable?
Is it forcing a resolution, or is it creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of the total war that Iran has promised?
That is the question, isn't it? Are we putting out the fire, or are we just pouring gasoline on it?
And as the president himself said, time is running out to find the answer.
Well, on that sober note, we are going to wrap up this deep dive. Thank you so much for listening, and we will obviously keep a very close eye on this situation.
Stay curious and stay informed.
We'll catch you next time.